It's a 4 a.m. wake-up call this morning because I'm off to Colombia.
I've been working for Nespresso for the past 14 years, and I was recently invited by the company to join a group of 20 from the Canadian market to visit Jardín, a town in Colombia's Antioquia region. We were given the opportunity to see some coffee farms, discover the bean-to-cup process, learn about Nespresso's AAA Sustainable Quality Program, and altogether enjoy a wonderful adventure along the way. Join me for the next few minutes to see some highlights of this incredible experience. We left Montreal early on Monday morning with a connection at Miami that would take us to Colombia.
We've just checked into our hotel in Medellin. I've had a shower and ordered some room service. It's been a really long day. I think I'm up to 20 hours since I woke up this morning, so I'm looking forward to a very cozy sleep tonight. We're up pretty early tomorrow. Breakfast is at 7 o'clock, and then at 8 we get on the bus to head to Jardín.
We emerged from this long tunnel to some incredible city sights before setting on the 5-hour winding regional road to coffee-growing country. Jardín is a quaint and colourful town in the heart of the Colombian Andes. We checked into our hotel, had some lunch, and spent the afternoon in some workshops getting to know our hosts and learning about AAA, a program initiated by Nespresso in 2003 to ensure the highest quality coffee yield while regenerating and protecting the environment and empowering workers and their communities with optimal social and welfare conditions. Having said that, we were frequently interrupted by this young lady who stood patiently at the window the whole time we were there and had a lot to say. Later in the evening, we took a Shiva into the town square, where we gathered for a drink of aguardiente before retiring to bed for the next morning's early wake-up call.
We're waking up to some rainy weather on Wednesday, our second day in Colombia, but this is the view from the balcony of my hotel room. It's really peaceful and idyllic.
Our Wednesday began with a jeep ride up a long, mountainous rural road to our first coffee farm, Los Pinos, owned and operated by the very hospitable Nancy, Don Hector, and their 2 sons. This has got to be one of the most stunning landscapes I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing.
My first cup of coffee with sugarcane at a coffee farm in Colombia.
After becoming acquainted with the family and learning about their beautiful farm, we were invited to take part in some tree planting, the true beginning of the bean-to-cup process. Firstly, we each transplanted a chipola, or a seedling, into a small pot.
So between 4 to 6 months after you prepared the chipolas, which we just done, you end up with this, the colino. And we're about to go and plant our colinos now.
We planted our colinos, performed a ceremonial prosperity dance, and left a handwritten note beside our newly planted coffee trees.
And here's my colino, my completed planted colino.
Straight after our tree planting, we donned some buckets and went for a walk up the slopes behind the house for a coffee picking challenge.
Right now we're in the plantation picking the red coffee beans off the trees, and we've been told the more beans we pick, the more lunch we get. The view here from the plantation is just magnificent. We're about half an hour into our exercise. We're nearly finished, and I'd say my bucket is about a third of the way full. It's interesting to note that it takes about 2 years for a coffee tree to reach the point where it's able to bear fruit. We're finished and we're about to weigh the coffee that we picked.
Daniel, 3.5.
Oh, nice. Good stuff.
Collectively, we picked 20 kilos of coffee in about 40 minutes, but this is nothing compared to Don Hector, who can pick 150 kilos by himself on a good day. Coffee farming is pretty hard work. And after that hard work, we had our lunch, made almost entirely by produce grown on the farm. Following lunch, we were invited to look at the farm's on-site mill, which removes the pulp from the cherry and separates the good from the bad quality beans. From here, the green beans are dried for around 2 weeks before they're bagged and taken to the purchasing point, which we'll see a little later. We also got to see the compost patch, where the broken down organic matter is reused on the farm to nourish the soil, as well as their incredible vegetable garden, before saying goodbye to our wonderful hosts.
We just finished our time at Los Pinos farm with Don Hector and Nancy and the family. It was a wonderful experience. It's absolutely paradisal up here.
We got back into the jeeps and headed the short distance to the Nespresso Central Mill, which is where AAA accredited farms who don't have their own mill are able to drop off their raw coffee for processing. Cherries from each bag are tested for quality, depulped on a slightly more industrial level, and eventually sold on as dry parchment coffee. Finally, we arrived back at Jardín to visit the purchasing point where the dry parchment coffee is sold. It's again tested for quality, categorized and prepared for shipping to the dry mill, the final step before being exported. As you can tell, our day was packed full of activity and education. We had dinner in Jardín and returned to our hotel to get some rest for an even earlier wake-up call the next morning. At 6 a.m, we were back on the jeeps, this time to the other side of Jardín to visit El Chocho farm, accessible by a steep and treacherous gravel trail, followed by a short hike along a mountainside path. Owned and operated by Juan, Carolina, and Margarita, the landscapes here were just as magnificent as what we saw the previous day. Carolina made us feel right at home by preparing some of her own coffee for us.
Taking this coffee overlooking this incredible valley it's just, words can't describe how magnificent this is. This is truly a moment that I'll remember forever in my life. And it's delicious coffee, by the way.
We went for a walk along the hill behind the house for a spot of bird watching.
Going for a walk up the hill to see the birds, and we're just picking some mandarins off the tree and eating them as we go up.
Carolina is involved in a birdwatching project where she's learning about and observing the 226 species of birds across Jardín, which add to the biodiversity, beautification, and pollination of the farm. Some of the birds we saw included the great kiskadee, an emerald toucan, and some friendly vultures. Carolina is also involved in a beekeeping project, so after the birds, we got a chance to talk to the head beekeeper before putting on our bee outfits,
All dressed up and ready to see the bees.
and making our way up to see the hives. I must admit I felt a little disconcerted being among 360,000 agitated bees, but it sure was an experience. Plus, we learnt a lot about how bees can provide an additional income for the farm, not to mention their very important contribution to pollination. We took the long way back to the house, but the bees followed us, so we had to keep our bee suit on for the rest of the time we were at the farm.
We should have undressed from our bee costume at the house, but instead we've come down to the cars in our full bee outfits, and we're going to get changed here. Cup of orange juice now before we set off back for the hotel.
And this concluded our time in Jardín. We checked out of the hotel and embarked on the return journey to Medellin. We stopped in the small town of Peñaliza for lunch and one final coffee.
This is a very cute little cafe called La Manchuria. Marco was busy inspecting the espresso machine here, and I've just gotten myself an espresso poured, so I'm about to try it. It's got a real fruitiness, a real tanginess to it. Definitely more on the bitter end. Very good quality.
All caffeinated up for the final leg of the drive, we said goodbye to our security guard who accompanied us for the trip and arrived in Medellin where we had a group celebration. The next day, a few of us who were still in town got the chance to walk through El Poblado, a popular spot in Medellin full of cafes, restaurants, and boutiques. A bright and cheerful end to our 5 days in Colombia. It was truly an honour to be part of this experience with this fantastic group of colleagues and friends from Nespresso Canada. As someone who works in supply chain, this experience has helped me fill in the first part of the chain, which you don't really get to experience at market level, the actual coffee production, the farmers, the people who are key to producing what eventually becomes the Nespresso capsules that we're all so familiar with. On my final day in Colombia, I had a conversation with Santiago, one of the coordinators from Farmways who helped put this trip together for us. He told me something I'll never forget. He said he's part of the new generation who want outsiders to see Colombia for its positive contribution to the world. And I can tell you that's exactly what I saw within this beautiful country. My heartfelt thanks to everyone who was part of this journey.
We survived the Jeep ride.
Yeah.